Welcome. We are visiting basic structure values of the Constitution of India. Our focus is to remain upon the continuity of the judicial court's jurisdiction and functional, procedural, and other apparatus of the justice delivery system. And with it, we have to concentrate and we have to be face to face with the union judiciary. And when union judiciary, here we would mean the Supreme Court of India, though we will see that it also means other lower grade courts as well. Now, for a continuity, we shall see that Article 374, note down Article 374 of the Constitution of India specifically provides that the judges of the federal court, means the apex court, prior to the commencement of the Constitution of India, it was the federal court. The judges of the federal court have been given the status, appointment, and all other sanctions and powers as judges of the Supreme Court. So the institution of the Federal Court of India has been transformed, and re-established as Supreme Court of India. The second thing to be seen is that the Constitution of India specifically provides continuity of the laws in operation as well. So once the laws have been permitted to continue, once the federal court as well has been transformed and re-established as the Supreme Court of India, and all other courts and all other authorities and all other functionaries as well similarly has been given continuity of life. With it, one point which has to be grasped fully is that our Constitution has very successfully maintained continuity with the past. Though the sovereignty has been transferred from UK to India, from UK Parliament to the Indian Parliament to the Indian people. So though the sovereignty stands transferred from UK to India, from people of UK to people of the India, but otherwise, as far as the laws and institutional operators and the division of the powers as sovereignty functions as well have been maintained as if there has been no change in respect thereof. Therefore, we have to absorb this value of the Constitution of India. The first value which we have to absorb as such is as to how, despite transfer of the sovereignty from UK to India, the functional apparatus, the functional laws, and all apparatus of exercise of the powers as such has been given continuity. It is a very big success. It is a very big value. And this that way will take us to as if the all judgments of the federal courts and high courts of period prior to the commencement of Constitution of India are operative and forcible and have all lawful and constitutional sanctity. So here it will be blissful to take note of certain dates. first date should be taken note of is 14th August 1947, is a day prior to the day of independence. So it will be blissful to be through the last judgment of the federal court. The judgment dated 14th August 1947 of the Federal Court of India, and see how beautiful values have been enunciated and pronounced here in this judgment. It is regarding the powers and duties of the federal court, so now the Supreme Court, as specially petition powers to interfere in the criminal judgments of the high courts and the trial courts. It's a very beautiful judgment. I will be giving you the particulars of it as well. Then we should see the first judgment of the Supreme Court of India. The Supreme Court, under the Constitution of India, under the Transfer of Powers Act, that judgment also deserves to be absorbed fully, to have a complete appreciation as to how successfully the continuity of the effective functional apparatus has been in place. The other aspect to be seen is as to the functional apparatus from 15th August 1947 to 25th of January 1950, as the Republic Day is 26th of January 1950. So from 15th August 1947 to 25th of January 1950 is one period. It is another very beautiful phase of having, in reality, full transition and transformation from the pre-independence era to post-independence era. Therefore, the judgment of the period 15th August 1947 to 25th of January 1950 shall be made a one clause and shall be appreciated. Here the very blissful, fortunate situation is that the Chief Justice of India, appointed on 15th August 1947, has been the fortunate justice to be the first Chief Justice of India under the Constitution of India as well, since the commencement of the Republic Day, 26th of January 1951. This as such will give us insight as to how we have been fortunate that we have one single judicial mind providing us complete bridge from the Independence Day to the Republic Day. It is in this light that we have to visit the entire range of basic structures, values of the Constitution of India. Therefore, we have to have a parallel examination of the legal history, the constitutional history of India, and it will, in one way, will take us to 1935, and the Government of India Act 1935 was legislated. Now, it will be a very good exercise for the students of Constitution of India to see how the Government of India Act 1935 facilitated the Constituent Assembly of India to reach at the draft and final text of the Constitution of India. A step behind will take us to 1858, when, after the first War of Independence, the British Parliament intervened and had taken over the entire reins in their hands. So the UK Parliament had taken the responsibility and had absorbed all the sovereign powers. So the phase 1858 to 1935, and from 1935 to 1947, and from 1947 to 1950 are the broad phases in which the development of the constitutional institutions can be chased. And a step much behind will take us to the day East India Company was incorporated and had entered the Indian domicile, the Indian domain. Anyway, today, when we are in 2020, then we can see that the provisions of the Constitution of India stand fully established and stand rooted in the basic structural foundation of the Constitution of India. Now, Part 5 of the Constitution of India is about the Union Judiciary. Chapter 4 is taking us as Article 124, Establishment and Constitution of Supreme Court. 124A is National Judicial Appointments Commission. Then functions of the commission. See, power of the parliament to make laws. See here, the original scheme as it was has not been taking these provisions of National Judicial Appointments Commission, functions of commission, powers of parliament to make laws regarding this National Judicial Commission and national and these appointments. Now, it is one phase, it is one domain, it is one focus point with respect to which there is going a big debate in our country as about the appointments of the judges of the Supreme Court, etc., is a subject of big discussion, and there are diversity of opinions amongst the constitutional scholars. Now, in this background, we have to go further. The provisions like salaries of the judges, appointment of acting chief justice, appointment of ad hoc judges, attendance of retired judges at sittings of the Supreme Court, these are that way the necessary practical steps to establish an institution. The persons to be vested with functional powers and responsibilities, say as judges, is the practical necessity, as all institutions have ultimately to function through the individuals. So it is the human factor which as such is at the central seat while we will be appreciating the basic structure values in respect of the Union Judiciary or the Supreme Court and High Courts. So, what is the role of a human factor? How the human factor in a reality makes all the difference with respect to the ideals and values which otherwise may be taken as textual ideal situations. But real situation is in terms of the potentialities, morality, and other functional aptitudes of the individuals who will be in the chairs and will merge and emerge as the institutions themselves. The distinction between the institution and the person in the chair as institution is a big domain. We as lawyers, we as students of law, and we as constitutional scholars have to concentrate as to how we can make a situation that there remains no gap between the ideal textual values of the institutions like Supreme Court and Supreme Court judges and the individuals who are appointed for that responsibility. The degree of the gap between the institution and the individual put in responsibility to function as an institution is a real challenge, and it is to remain throughout. It has been in the past, it is at present, and it is to remain in future as well. Therefore, we as liars, when view this gap through the practical glasses, then we have also to find out the real answer for the same as well. The focus as a liar naturally is to remain upon the quality of justice which will flow. Institution, individual in charge of the institution, and the ideals of justice and the reality of the quality of the justice delivered. For this all, we have to be through the whole range of basic structure values of the Constitution of India, and then we have to reappreciate as to how we can make a sequential process of bridging these gaps. It is here where it is the quality of the individuals which is to matter. Ultimately, everything will boil down to the quality of the individuals, which may be also taken as human factor. So, human factor is the basic factor with respect to which and in terms of which we have to evaluate, we have to absorb, and we have to imbibe the basic structure values of the Constitution of India. It is we, the people of India, who have constituted India as sovereign democratic republic. We, the people of India, have also, while distributing the sovereignty functions, have kept a big bulk amongst ourselves for ourselves as fundamental rights. So, fundamental rights is a very big chunk of the sovereignty which has not been devolved upon other functionaries under the Constitution of India. When the other domain, other than the fundamental rights domain of the sovereignty is distributed, then its distribution is as executive, as legislature, and as judiciary. Now, as we have seen in the previous session, that in practical situation, the interpretation has been that whatever the powers are not with the legislatures, whatever the functional responsibility is not with the judiciary, that vests as a residue with the executive. Therefore, again, the human factor is being given more importance. Now, executive quality is to determine the justice delivery system. The justice delivery system appreciation shall be by appreciating the individuals who have been manning these institutions, these chairs. Our first Chief Justice of India, Harilal Kania, he is the first Chief Justice of India since he 15th of August 1947 continued up till the 25th of January 1950, and again on 26th of January 1950 he was appointed as the Chief Justice of India. So it is this personality, it is the values of this judicial mind which deserve to be appreciated to have the evaluation of the growth of justice delivery system of our country. Therefore, we as students of law, as legislative analysts, and as lawyers shall visit not only the judicial pronouncements flowing through the pen of this judicial mind, but also his administrative capabilities and the direction which it has given, the quality which has been imbibed by him, and the way this judicial mind, with its experience and wisdom, has given the richness to the administrative effect of the functional duties of the Supreme Court of India on its administrative side as well. So we shall be through the biography of this individual, this distinguishing Indian mind has really added very big, very rich, very colorful spectrum to the quality of the judicial and administrative functional apparatus of our country. And then it also will be a very blissful exercise that we shall see the continuity of this privilege and continuity of this contribution flowing through the chair of the Chief Justice of India, not only on the judicial side, but on the administrative side. As such, what I would suggest is that we shall enlist the judgments of Justice Kania and let us analyze it. Let us visit the judicial growth and judicial functional quality during 15th August 1947 to 25th of January 1950. And then in the light of the same, we shall continue this exercise and bring it up till 2020. Once this exercise is completed, then let us enlist, let us tabulate full court judgments of the Supreme Court of India. And then let us try to analyze, let us try to imbibe the values of the full court judgments of the Supreme Court of India. And it is in this background that we shall be enriching ourselves as lawyers, as students of law, as well as the scholars of law. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.